Disability advocates in BC were hotly anticipating this week's federal budget. It finally disclosed the details of the long awaited National Disability Benefit. Hopes were high on Tuesday when the feds announced that $6.1 billion over 6 years will be allocated toward the benefit. Now, 600,000 Canadians with disabilities are eligible to receive it. And then when that benefit kicks in next year, in fact, in July of 2025, is when the first money will become available. And to talk about some of the concerns, we are joined right now by a representative for the NDP. Bonita Zarrillo is a federal NDP MP for Port Moody Coquitlam and the NDP's critic for disability inclusion. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on this morning.
We are waiting to connect with Sameer Zuberi, who is the parliamentary secretary for the federal government and also the Minister of Diversity or Minister responsible for diversity. You heard, that this amounts to about $200 a month, topping up what people already get from the province. What's your response to that?
Yes, well, I think there's been a response nationally from the disability community that this was really woefully inadequate. Certainly, I think you mentioned it, that, Canadians are having a tough time, and $200 a month, it's not even enough to buy groceries for a month. So my response is that, this isn't the Canada Disability Benefit that the community was looking for. This isn't the Canada Disability Benefit that the majority of Canadians support. There definitely needs to be much more support, and an adequate income is what's needed.
And what are people with disabilities getting from the province right now? I was told earlier on it's about $1,300 a month here in British Columbia. Do you happen to know?
Well, it varies across Canada. There's different rates in different provinces, and there's also different criteria to be eligible for disability supports across the province. So it's nowhere near the poverty line, which we know is almost double what every single province offers right now.
Well, right. And then even with $200, you're still well and woefully below hitting the poverty line.
That's absolutely right. And that's why, as the NDP critic and as the NDP, that we pushed this Liberal government to have in legislation in the Canada Disability Benefit that this benefit would supply an adequate income. It's Canada's obligation to supply an adequate standard of living for persons with disabilities, and the Liberals just aren't meeting that mark right now.
You posed a question to the Prime Minister in Parliament, asking him to increase the disability benefit immediately. If an extra $200 per month is not adequate, what dollar figure would the NDP like to see?
Well, the NDP would like to see at least meeting the poverty line for every person with a disability. So that's closer to about $2,000 a month. And we know that it costs more to have a disability, to manage some of the ableist barriers that are in front of persons with disabilities in society. So we know for sure that the Liberal government should step up with at least the poverty line. And if I talk about my question yesterday to the Prime Minister has the power to say, let's stop the $60 billion corporate handouts and let's support people in Canada with programs such as the Canada Disability Benefit.
And so you're calling then on the federal government to, instead of $2,000 contributing $2,000 or $200 a month, you'd like it to be $2,000 a month.
What I'd like it to be is meeting the poverty line, which is about $2,000 a month, a little bit more. So if the province can cover a half, or would be great if the provinces would step that up, we need to be making up that difference at the federal level to make sure that people are able to pay their bills and to live an adequate standard of living.
Well, if on average provinces are contributing about $1,300, you'd need another $1,000 just to make it to the poverty line.
You do, or just absolutely.
So that would probably be a minimum amount. Then you'd be looking at $1,000 rather than the $200 from the federal government.
And absolutely, for the disability community, they were not expecting to see anything less than that. So I think the community was shocked, Canadians were shocked, and certainly it's very unfortunate the Liberals needed to be pushed even to get the disability benefit on the record. And now we're going to have to push them again to make an adequate contribution to the standard of living for persons with disabilities.
Nevertheless, I mean, even with your dismay, how likely is it that your NDP colleagues are going to vote against this budget?
Well, right now, our leader, Jagmeet Singh, has been talking about some of the conversations that he's having with the Liberal government. We've had, as the NDP, we've been able to push the federal government on a dental care program, which is very, very popular, and a lot of people in my riding of Port Moody, Coquitlam, Manmore, and Belcarra have already signed up.
Sure, but the rollout is not exactly going smoothly.
You know, it is. It is actually. We've been able to get many hundreds of thousands of people signed up for the program, and we're very, very, very happy about the fact that kids under the age of 12 last year, many were able to go to the dentist for the very first time, and we see the same thing going to happen here with the dental care for seniors and persons with disabilities right away.
Right.
But also, too, with the pharmacare and the school food program, which I'm sure you know, Stephen, is very popular in the Lower Mainland. We want kids to have a full tummy at school.
Bonita, we're going to leave it there because we have managed to reach the parliamentary secretary as well, and we appreciate your time very much, and good luck with it.
Thank you for covering this important topic.
Okay, you take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that is the NDP's critic for disability inclusion, Bonita Zarrillo. Now, Sameer Zuberi joins us, Parliamentary Secretary for the federal government's Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and Persons with Disabilities. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Stephen.
When Bill C-22 passed legislation in 2023, it was presented as a way to lift disabled Canadians out of poverty. Do you think an extra $200 a month does that?
Well, I like to situate the conversation, and I think we're at a really historic moment right now, and this has been a buildup of decades of advocacy from the disability community. The disability community has been asking for us as a government to intervene to help people living with disability, persons with disabilities, but also living in poverty, to be supported, to be uplifted.
Does
So
$200, sorry, the question to you, Secretary, the question to you is, does $200 extra a month from the federal government do anything to lift people with disabilities out of poverty?
this helps alleviate poverty for persons with disabilities. And this is a very significant aspect of this budget. It is, we are doing major spending to help uplift people who need it most. This represents $6.1 billion over 6 years. It's a very significant amount.
It amounts to $6 a day. There are 600,000 people eligible for this. It amounts to $6 per day per person with a disability. Are you telling me that that's enough to lift people out of poverty?
What I'm saying is that our government has really sought to meet the moment. We are doing major spending through this benefit. This benefit represents the largest item of spending in this budget. Is this a final word on it? No. But is this a major milestone? Yes. Is this the first time that a government has acted to address the issue? Yes. Is there more to do? There's always more to do, but this is a very significant moment and a very significant step, and I think we need to recognize that.
And again, I mean, what does this actually do for people? You know, when you look at the reality of what things cost here in the Lower Mainland, an average apartment, a one-bedroom apartment, costs $2,800 a month. We've seen rents since your government took power in 2015. Rents have gone up about 21.6% right across the country. Is this even keeping up with anything? Is this keeping up at all with the cost of living?
This is we're doing our utmost best to meet the moment, and I'm not gonna claim that everything is going to be completely solved through one mechanism, through this benefit alone. But this benefit is something to celebrate in this point in time, and it's not something that exists in isolation. It's coupled with the child benefit. It's coupled with pharmacare. It's coupled with the dental benefit. And if we take the example of the child benefit, it has been something that our government has augmented and has increased over time. So this benefit is a
We're not
major.
talking again. We're not talking about the child benefit. We're talking about this. We're talking about a benefit that the federal government promised for people with disabilities that would lift them out of poverty.
We have introduced this benefit to alleviate poverty, and there is always more to do. But I do want to recognize how significant this moment is. This is after decades of advocacy, after legislation has been passed, and now for the first time, monies have been allotted for this. It is the single largest item in our budget that for any program, any single program. And this, I think, we need to, while there's always more to do, we need to recognize that it is also a very significant moment in time for the disability community.
Um, our noon show here in British Columbia, BC Today, put to callers the new benefit yesterday, took calls from people. And I just want to play you a clip from somebody who called in and spoke with our host, Michelle Elliott. This is Tracy from Penticton.
I've got disabilities. I've been someone who's had to rely on benefits off and on over the years. Sometimes I'm able to work, sometimes I'm not. And it's really hard to get out of poverty when every single cent that you have goes to just barely making your living expenses. Like, there's no room to breathe for people.
So, by the sound of it, the reality for Tracy and other Canadians with disabilities is that they're feeling a real financial pinch in other aspects of life. I mean, of course, we just talked about the cost of rent. There's the cost of groceries. There's the cost of every other expense we've seen. So, what factors went into coming up with this $6.1 billion to this maximum of $2,400 a year for disabled Canadians? You keep saying over and over again that this is the single most expensive item in the budget. But where did that number come from? Why $6.1 billion? Why $200 a month?
Well, we looked at the spending that we can do in this moment in time, and we have exited COVID. We have seen stress on the public purse, and with all of that in context, we have also moved on the benefit. And so this benefit is being realized. There was a lot of concern whether or not this benefit would actually happen in reality. And so this budget actually focused on the benefit. It lifted it up. It made it the single most prominent item in terms of spending. And this all within the context that we're in, where yes, the public purse is being squeezed, and still we've gotten this through the finish line in terms of this budget. Now is there more to do? There's always more to do. Will it help people in this moment? I would say yes, it does help people in this moment. Does it solve everything? There's always there are other elements that do help out. But I'm not gonna say that it's a single
Right.
thing that helps everything, but it does help out, and I think we need to recognize that.
There's also the question of access for people and who is eligible. The BC organization Disability Without Poverty says there are 1.5 million people nationwide who should be able to access this benefit. This is only available, though, to people who are able to access the disability tax credit. As you said, that's about 600,000 people. Here's what their chair had to say about some of the bureaucratic barriers when it comes to accessing this help.
The number of people who are currently on disability tax credit is roughly 300,000. So it's missing out over 1 million people. By my calculations, in BC, of the people who are on what we call here PWD, our disability assistance payment, there's 120,000 people on that. We're missing out 75,000 people.
So that's just in BC. I'm wondering why that is.
And I think it's really important advocacy around the tax credit. And we have heard from individuals, stakeholders, and groups about barriers to accessing the tax credit in terms of it being complicated, it being burdensome. And for that reason, in this budget, we have also allocated money specifically to make it easier, 240 million to make it easier for people to go through, the system to get the tax credit, make it easier. So 240 million is allocated specifically to help people get the tax credit. This will help people to access the benefits that we're talking about and other other programs that we're talking about, so that will help alleviate poverty.
Bill C-22 was passed in June of 2023. Final question for you is, why do Canadians have to wait until July of 2025 to get access to this money?
And that is also a really important thing to ask, and a question for us to look at and understand. So the C-22 was passed about a year ago. It then has to, after it passes, we then had to create regulations to understand how to address and how to roll out this benefit to the diversity of disabilities and the reality that people have. There are a wide range of disabilities that one can have. And so each one requires a different way to meet it to help alleviate poverty. So we've collected, we've spoken with hundreds of stakeholders. We've put out our survey, collected 5,000 substantive feedback points from Canadians. All of this has been collected together so that we can have regulations or that will allow us to roll out the benefit. So there is a process. We have been on track to meet it, and that will now be public and published. And the regulations will be. This will allow Canadians to access the benefit,
Right.
and we have dollars, as you know, through this budget to make it a reality.
Secretary, we will have to leave it there this morning. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for taking our
Thanks,
questions.
Stephen, for reporting on this. It's really important. Thank you so much.
Take care. That is Sameer Zuberi, Parliamentary Secretary for the Federal Government's Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and Persons with Disabilities.